Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
Welcome, folks, to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today's date is January the 15th, 2021. We are into a new year. The last time we aired, I think we were just at the beginning of December, moving through the month of December, and then things got a little hectic between the holidays and everything going on with the election and information and misinformation and craziness abounded. But we decided that tonight we needed to do a broadcast. We need to kind of catch people up and in the same respect, get the word out there, put it that way. We are all familiar with what occurred with the election. The country is divided as to what went down, but I can tell you I've seen the evidence that there is definitely a lot of interesting activity on the Dominion servers, the least of which was the fact that they were connected to the internet on some occasions, which is completely illegal, cannot happen, is not supposed to ever happen, yet it was happening. On top of that, you had the absolute refusal of the judicial system in the United States of America to even entertain the cases. It's not that the cases got into court and they heard evidence and they said this isn't enough. It's not that they even got to the threshold of the court. They were pretty much whooped away before they got even close to the court. So, every time I hear a news report stating that, oh, there's no evidence of election fraud or voter fraud, well, yeah, there's no evidence to the public because, again, rather than even go over the evidence, the court simply denied to even to basically acknowledge the fact that it existed. You're talking thousands of affidavits. You're talking physical evidence.
Well, they didn't want an evidentiary hearing to get it all on the record.
Correct. And it's interesting because, somebody tried to point out to me today, well, it's kind of up to the courts as to what cases they hear and what cases they don't hear. Well, no. Every judge, whether or not they're a state judge, a local judge, a federal judge, they have all taken an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America. And when you're dealing with something that has constitutional value or recourse or impact, such as an election, it is their duty as a judge, a sworn duty, that they at least acknowledge the case. And they did not do that over all the way up to the Supreme Court, over and over and over and over again. And I think, I don't know if, I can't tell you exactly what's going on, because I mean, either the Democrats are the absolutely, and Republicans both, they're either the dumbest people on the face of the earth, or they are so terrified by what's being held over their heads that they would rather cross 75 million people than do the right thing.
Well, I can give you multiple reasons for that. Okay, so every public official, no matter what level of government it is, every public official has to take the oath of office, which is support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And if you're state and local, you get the added sworn to the state constitution. Okay.
Correct.
But the thing is, though, it does not mean that if you're compromised, you are going to look out for number one.
Right.
So if they have blackmail material on you, you're going to do whatever you have to do in order to keep that from coming out. And this is why we've been talking about pedophilia and pedophilia, blackmail. It's the most effective means of maintaining control over politicians.
And as we're finding out, ties to the Chinese military-industrial complex. That's
the bribery side of it. There's video. They do the pedophile blackmail material isn't just Chinese. Matter of fact, a large portion of it is Israel and us. The Epstein operation, according to Steve Pachenik, a former Assistant Secretary of State, is part of a Mossad operation. Okay. And then we have us. I mean, I remember going back to my days in government that I remember hearing about Bush doing the same thing to senators and congressmen to get them on the hook. You know, they'd send a hooker down to some DC function. They'd roofie the senator or congressman's drink, get him up to a hotel room, and as the guys doped out of his mind, the hooker goes into the bathroom, and out comes a child dressed similarly, and he doesn't know any different, any better, or whatever, and they get him on the camera doing the dirty deed, and then they got him for life.
Yep.
But beyond that though, then you have the financial aspect, which we are finding is pervasive. You know, the Chinese have had spies in the United States in every level of government. They've had, we're finding out about Li Ping, that female that was banging one of the congressmen. Ding ding, ling ling, whatever.
Ling, ling, ding, ding. I've seen it come out. Oh Lord, Ding,
ling, ling, ling. Yeah, I don't know. But then you have who was it? Barbara or Feinstein's driver.
Yes,
for
that was a
20
couple
years.
Years back. Yes, was arrested.
Yeah, he was a Chinese spy.
Yep.
And
you had
what else?
Well, on top of that, you had all these higher learning institution professors who were completely connected to China, and then you had NASA. You had multiple people fired and arrested in NASA.
Yeah. Yep. NASA, Harvard, University of North Carolina, there was multiple universities.
University of Tennessee, UTEN, Knoxville.
It was all part of China's Thousand Talents program. They were trying to suck up. They were trying to brain drain the United States technology because China's great at pumping out mass-produced goods, but they don't have the ingenuity and imagination that Americans have. They don't have that. It's because they're the great fallacy of the communism is that you're putting their brains in a box. You don't allow them to venture outside that box, so they don't. That imagination gets stifled, and after a while, all you are is a drone, and that's exactly what they want to do here.
Well, individuality is generally the kinetic spark to not just critical thinking, but also to intelligent design, to creative design. And that's kind of what pushes people to go outside what they have. In communism and even in socialistic states in many ways, there's no need to expand because they're not going anywhere. And that's the thing. You take their hope, you take their ability to foresee a better future. Those things are gone. They're wiped out.
Yeah.
Those people are stuck in a persistent state of repeated actions, day after day after day.
Well, that was true. As I understand it, it's another thing Steve Pachenik said that the thing about China is that their government is in a precarious position. You know, they were trying to build up the business sector, but what it did was it increased their middle class, who now want more representation in government. They want more of a say in what their country does.
Right.
So they've been fragile. They've been fragile for a while. But the thing about it, though, is like like the Chinese troops, the Chinese Communist Army. The problem for the Communist Army is that they have very little to fight for, other than fear. You know, it's not like let's just say the Chinese Army invaded the United States. You know, that's not going to take long to sap their morale. I mean, and they're gonna be in for a fucking handful here. It's not just the troops they got to go after, or they got to go against. They got to go against the average American. You know, where was it Yamamoto said there'd be a rifle behind every blade of grass. You know, that's exactly what they'd be facing.
Well, and it's very interesting because I don't think, while the focus is China, I don't think China is the only problem. I mean, you had
No.
Pompeo, who was very, very, very vocal last week, and pointing out the fact that Iran is a huge problem. Cuba is once again on the enemy list, and they should be. They should be. What Obama did was, oh, Lord, beyond treasonous. And it's not that we don't want to embrace the Cuban people. It's not that at all. It's not that we don't want to bring peace between our governments. It's that with countries like Cuba and places like that, it's not about that. It's about infiltration. And honestly, you know, it's a problem. And again, being Floridians, we know firsthand how close Cuba is to us.
Well, the thing is, though, the Chinese have invaded. You know, they've infiltrated us, and they have. There's some deep financial ties between our government officials and China, and it is now coming out in the Hunter Biden hard drives that Hunter Biden acted as an intermediary. Him, Uncle Jim, I think was his name. Joe Biden's son brother is Jim, I think is.
Yes.
Okay, so you got Hunter, you got Jim and Joe. They're running a criminal organization. You know, not just Burisma. It's not just Burisma. We're talking about even the Chinese Communist Party. Hunter set up a meeting, FaceTime with the big man, as they said in the email, the big guy, and that's Joe Biden. Now, as from what I found in reports, Joe Biden's been in the Chinese pockets for 24 years.
Easily. But again, you know, you need to follow the money trail. Do your homework. The Bush family, hugely Chinese.
Yeah.
And we knew that. That's the thing. Everybody knew that. I mean, it wasn't like we didn't know about
the Clintons
in China. Of course we knew.
Yeah, the Clintons. And that's the reason, you know, the whole Monica Lewinsky scandal, that was a cover-up for Chinagate, because people from both sides of the aisle were going to get wrapped up in that.
Yep.
It wasn't just Clinton. That was the cover for to keep people distracted from Chinagate.
Correct. And
then the other thing too,
they were doing all these little underhanded sales. I mean, you had Uranium One, which should never have happened. That should never have happened. That was Russia. It should never have happened. I don't know how that even cleared national security as a sale. I don't know how that happened. Oh, I do, but it should never have happened. And now you have China, who bought out the appliance part of GE in 2016, and apparently has been negotiating with a person whose name shall remain unsaid. They were negotiating to sell the utility side of GE, which again, that's a government regulated utility, cannot be sold to China.
It's not the utility side. It was not just the utility side. It was also the military side of it. You got to
Yeah.
understand, General Electric has their hands in everything, and
Everything.
including the jet engines for the F-16 and a few other jets. So if, potentially an Americans ever faced off with Chinese in the future, they'd be facing jets with the same power plants
Correct.
as their jets.
Yep.
So, yeah,
We
so
might as well just give them our
that
defense.
deal, yeah, that deal was going on in secret in Pakistan.
Yep.
GE and the Chinese Communist conglomerate were negotiating the sale, and during that time period, they had a blackout. I wonder how. I wonder.
Well, in
They had
Pakistan,
a blackout. The timing was phenomenal.
I gotta tell you, Pakistan kind of put themselves on the map multiple times here, and people just weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
And you had the Debbie Wasserman Schultz freaking fiasco with her laptop and her assistant that was Pakistani, and notice how that all disappeared. Her laptop disappeared, everything disappeared. And I said to people, when laptops disappear like that, usually it means it's in the hands of somebody who's either going to sit on it and use it for blackmail, or is using it to come after you later. You got a choice. I think in this situation, Trump's administration sat on it to go after them later, because Pakistan was caught with the Nevada ballots.
Yes, that's what I was gonna go. That's what I was going. Yeah.
Yeah. So
they got caught with it. They got caught they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar manipulating Nevada votes.
It's like, we didn't know Osama bin Laden was here. Right. That even proves further that was all a setup, because the Obama administration was all friendly, kissy, huggy with Pakistan. And there was Osama bin Laden, who may or may not have been Osama bin Laden. I don't think it was. I think Osama bin Laden died long before that.
Yeah,
just big bullshit charade. I mean, really? They dumped his body off a Navy vessel? Really? And
they couldn't afford to let everybody know that he died earlier. They had to keep the war going.
Yep.
So they had to keep his legend alive. That's why every time he had one of those, supposedly put out one of those videos, he kept getting younger and younger, because those were old videos. Those were old videos.
I know.
So we have Chinese influence, and Biden's bought off by the Chinese. So what do you think is going to happen? You think that the national security apparatus is going to allow Biden, who's been bought off and controlled by the CCP, to ascend to the presidency?
I think
it ain't happening.
Well, I think the cabal, again, as a Q follower, you guys have all ripped me to shreds more times than I can count about, where's the proof? Where is the proof? We're looking at the proof now, because literally everything is coming together that was said. Everything. Yep. I mean, literally, it's like watching a movie that you kind of got the screenplay to, and you read the ending, and you're like, oh shit.
Well, it's more important than that. This is the Q drops laid out a timeline. They laid out a map to what was going to happen. And one of the reasons why you have to do this is so that nobody can say at the last minute that Trump just overthrew the Biden administration because he was upset over the vote, over the electoral college vote.
And not just that.
You can't say that. This thing has been playing out for a long time, and we're going to lay that out tonight. We're going to explain to you what happened and where we're going.
Well, and the thing is that
guys.
Even with the bullshit waste of money that the second impeachment fiasco was, boy, that's backfiring on her big time. But I mean, number one, it enraged me that she even did that, because here we are in a country that has been locked down for almost a year now. A lot of people unemployed. A lot of people who aren't employed are not making money. We had a stimulus that she, excuse the expression, monkey screwed for 6 to 8 months, used it as a political leverage machine rather than come to an idea, at least help the American people. You want to play politics, that's great, but at least help the American people and the small businesses. oh no, oh no, no, no. She had to play her games and basically then screwed us on the stimulus. Her and the Republicans alike, they screwed us completely on the stimulus. So then she goes and dumps another 30 to 40 million in on a sham impeachment.
Yep.
Excuse you, me? Because what,
But
you felt threatened? Oh, honey. What do you think the American people have felt over the last year with Antifa and BLM running wild? You think people didn't feel threatened by that?
And they were inciting it the whole time.
Yep.
They were fundraising for it. They were organizing the bail. They were organizing the bail after they were burning buildings down and killing people.
Hundreds of people lost their lives, and more than that, thousands of people lost their livelihoods because of the BLM and Antifa riots. Literally, hundreds of people have been killed. And yet, 4 people went at these protests. 4 people died. 3 of them died of things that had nothing to do with the protests really at all. One of them actually is an unknown. They can't tell you. She was a 35-year-old woman just dropped dead in the middle of the protest. Nobody's sure what happened with her. The lady from Ashley, what's her last name? Babbitt?
Babbitt.
She died, obviously, she was the gunshot wound victim. Okay, which we're all still questioning because they still have not identified the officer that shot her. That is unheard of. That is unheard of. We don't have that officer's name. They won't tell us.
No, they're covering for him for sure. They're covering for him.
But again, if it was just a Capitol Police officer, why are you covering for him?
Yeah, well, they're still going to cover for him no matter what. The problem is that there's so much outrage over that shoot that I'm sure they're worried about the safety of the officer and his family, and rightfully so.
I'm sorry, they didn't worry about any other cop or their families over the past year.
No. I know. Hey man, you and I both know there's hypocrisy all around in this argument. When they're inciting violent riots and everything else, it's okay, it's revolution. But when the right goes after the cradle of globalist power to lynch the actual fucking cancer, oh Jesus, I got my F-bomb for the night. To lynch the actual cancer, which wasn't the case at all, but if it was them, okay, if that was the case, that's not revolution. That is a violent mob. The hypocrisy abound all around is just incredible.
Well, and the fun part about this is that we were there. Raphael and I were actually there at the Capitol. Now, neither of us went.
I got some great video.
Neither of us went into the Capitol. We're not that stupid.
No.
Feeling that rebellious. It was. I was of the mind that.
I was feeling it. I was feeling it, but it doesn't mean I acted on it. Okay.
No, I mean, and here's the thing: you have to understand, folks, that there's a lot that happened there that was not being reported. I mean, number one, the size of the crowd. Okay, it was not a couple 100,000 people. It was a couple of million people. We know because we were crushed in the middle of them.
I'd say about 1 million. I mean, you're talking about the entire ellipse and then everything surrounding the Washington Monument. I mean, it was that they were supporters as far as the eye can see, and there couldn't have been more than a foot of gap between each person. It was all around.
You couldn't move. They're not talking about the fact that the DC police were actually beating people with billy clubs as they were trying to make their way to the Capitol. No violence happening. Nobody was getting. Nothing was happening. They were simply, the crowd was so large that they were swelling out to the sides of the street, and they had put up these chains on the sides of the street to try to keep them off certain areas. And if people were hitting the chains, they were getting whacked with billy clubs, including elderly women, children. It was not a pretty sight. I mean, it was definitely an overreach. That was angering, especially the military men in the crowd, but it was angering, and it was starting to get that crowd a little riled up. But what they're not saying to you is that the breach had already occurred by that point, because the breach occurred, according to the press, at about 1 o'clock, 1:05, somewhere in that range. Every Trump supporter who came there to listen to Trump, who was actually a true patriot and got up there because we were asked to be there, was still in the park. They were all listening in the park, or they were on the side streets. Everybody was still focused, actually wondering why Trump was still talking when it was like 1:15 going on 1:30. And we knew that the Capitol, they were in session, Congress is in session as of 1 o'clock. So
Yeah,
we
it
were
was like,
literally
we didn't get out there till 2. We didn't
literally,
get out there
we
till
were
2.
all talking in the crowd, weren't we? Like, what are we still doing
Yeah.
here? What are we doing? Why is he
Yeah.
talking in circles? I
Yep.
mean, it was very interesting to see. And then, okay, actually, I got to take us out to break. I'm getting the.
I'm just saying. I'm pretty sure we're over on time.
Marriage sucks.
I love you.
Uh-huh.
I love you.
Okay, guys,
Right, let's do
hang
it.
in there. We'll be back in just a moment. On behalf of the Odyssey Radio Network, we thank you for joining us for this show. So give us just a minute. We'll be back after this break.
Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
And welcome back, folks, to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today's date is, well, now we're into January the 16th. We are running late with our recording today. 12:03 a.m. on January 16th, 2021. You can tell I'm wide awake. Wrong answer. But on behalf of my co-hosts, Rafael Martinez and myself, I'd like to welcome you all back to the show. As we were going into our first break, I was basically going into the fact that Rafael and I were both up in DC in the Capitol. We have actually, it's funny because we met new friends along the way and found out some old friends were there with us and we had no idea they were there. So it was an interesting trip. I don't regret it. I can tell you both Rafael and I had a very strong, I can't tell you why, and I don't think he can either. Just this drive, this like you knew, I just felt like
We needed to be there. We just needed to be there.
Like it was like imperative that we go. And I don't think either one of us was sure what was going to happen. We had hopes that it would have, that Mike Pence was going to do the right thing, but I think deep down, I knew he wasn't going to because of the Q drops. I knew. And because, again, I always tell Rafael, when certain people remind me of certain animals, it's usually not a good thing. It's a very bad thing, especially the type of animals like mongoose, ferrets, things like that. As cute as they can be, their looks are deceiving in many ways. So Mike Pence is one of those people. I've never trusted him, ever. Never, not once. In fact, when Trump took him on as a running mate, I believe I looked at you and said, oh, I said, so that was the concession he had to make so the deep state could put their guy in. I mean,
Yep.
I knew what the game was before Q ever dropped on that. I knew that.
It was the same thing that happened to Reagan with Bush.
Yes. It was basically, you know, okay, so you caught us by surprise. Yeah, we didn't think he was going to be this popular, which I don't know how the man spoke the truth. And this country was starved for that. Starved.
Yes.
I mean, literally starving for the truth. We were just so tired of being constantly lied to. I remember in 2012, I was looking at Raphael and saying, I want to throw up because this is, you know, for the first time in my life, I just really don't want to vote. I vote because it's my civic duty. I ended up writing Ron Paul's name in because I wasn't voting for Obama. That was never going to happen. But I also could not vote for Mitch McConnell. Could not, in right conscience, do that. Couldn't stand the guy. Couldn't stand him. He's another one that just gets my back up. John McCain, another one, gets my back up. Yeah. And like I said, Pence, obviously, it's proven true. I don't think he's going to end well. I'll be honest with you. No matter how you flip this, no matter which side comes out on top, Pence is screwed. Republicans never take him back. I mean, if the party might, the people won't.
Again, but that will only hold true if he wasn't playing a role, you know, in setting up the trap.
He could have, and I've thought about that. I really have thought about that because again, it just seemed like when Trump was talking in the park, he was emphasizing things so much, and it made me, you know, it's like, okay, so you're setting him up for something. What? So the other side will trust him, and that's kind of where I kind of went that direction too. But I still don't like Mike Pence. I don't like him.
It's like, it was feigning a position of weakness.
Yeah,
is what it was.
And if you read,
but in reality,
but
in reality, is that he had to get, you know, there were multiple reasons for Trump calling the people to D.C. On the 6th. You know, for one thing, he needed to get the traitors to show their true colors.
Yes.
You know, all those Republicans that certified the vote, knowing that it was outright fraud. And we know it's fraud because we've been combing through the videos. You know, local politicians pulling out boxes of freaking ballots and running them through. Come on, it's not rocket science. And that's not even the Dominion stuff. This is just outright paper ballots being inserted into the voting system.
Well, even the one, what was her name? Lori, the Georgia politician that lost. What was her name? She ended up. She was the one of the two in the runoff on January 5th, and she lost the runoff, and then she in turn voted against hearing. You know, basically, she voted for the electorate to be accepted, and totally against her. And it was funny because Lynn Wood targeted her, and kept saying she was no friend, and he was.
They're all compromised. Again, we've said it for years. The Republicans and the Democrats, so Democrats and Republicans, however you want to call it,
one party.
They are two sides. They are two sides of the same coin. Their job is to create a strategy of tension, to divide the country, by demographic, by age, you know, basically
by
the whole works, the age, the race, the income, anything and everything to divide the nation so that they can conquer it. By any means necessary. So they're all playing a role. And even Fox News, you know, if for you people, you normies that still aren't on board yet, Fox News, if you haven't already seen them turn on Trump, the whole, you know, even the way the debates went down with Chris Wallace, clearly it was all biased. They passed the questions off to Biden before the debates even started,
Yep.
and the way it was all moderated, you could see the clear bias.
Yep.
Now going on to the 6th, the second reason that Trump needed us to be there on the 6th. Look, the FBI already knew. They already had intel that Antifa was going to raid the Capitol. We already knew that. But that's the reason why Trump held us behind. This is the reason why he delayed. He showed up an hour late and then rambled on for another hour after he was supposed to be done, so we would not be part of that Antifa stuff. That way they can single out the guys that needed to be charged, which there have been some, and some of them have already been released. Oh, surprise.
Oh,
So,
I know. The guy who orchestrated it was caught
Yeah.
already. Now, the
Yeah.
idiot who stole the podium, he got out yesterday, but he had to post I think it was $20,000 bail.
Yeah.
And he was, I mean, again, though, I've got to wonder what the arresting states were. Because I know the guy that stole the podium, he was here in Florida. In fact, he was not far from us. And Florida doesn't have the catch and release.
Yeah.
New York
Well,
does.
again, yeah, but the thing is, though, they knew that the Antifa was going to be there. That's the reason why they delayed us. But Trump needed us there in order to create enough incentive to trigger the Insurrection Act.
Correct.
And one of the key provisions for triggering the Insurrection Act is that Trump had to make a public statement telling the public to tell the public to go back home peacefully.
Correct.
And he did so. He published it on Twitter. So he met the legal definition of it, and they signed off on it. Was it a day or two later?
I
think on the 8th.
I don't know if that timing's right, because he met the legal definition, but Twitter deleted it. I mean, it was up for
they deleted it,
seconds, and they deleted it. So
But he still published it, though.
He made a public post by documentation on the White House website, which was probably how it should have been done in the first place. I got my text. I actually got a text, a presidential text with that post in it. So, and I know many others did too, but a lot of people didn't. So in other words, he reached as much of the masses as he possibly could without a social media account. Now, what I find really funny about all this, this is now touching into that monster, the actual censorship we're seeing in social media, which again, anonymous were warned. That's why they all had backup accounts for their backup accounts. Absolutely warned that this was coming, and that what we saw back in October, September, June, all those different rampages they went on deleting accounts, that was nothing compared to what was coming. I'm on the fence about what happened with Parler, because I am one of these people who thinks Parler was put there for a reason, and it was to collect the data of conservatives. So they'd be able to locate you. I know they're, basically when Parler went down, right before the server went offline, it was hacked. And every person's information, every post they ever made, whether they were identified or verified or not, was taken. And
what was one of the requirements to sign up for Parler? You had to give your freaking driver's license picture.
Yep, you had
to confirm your identity.
But that's not.
That
here's the thing.
like a setup.
That
did smell like a setup.
But that's some bullshit, because here's the thing. Ron Watkins, aka Code Monkey Z, there were multiple people who impersonated him on Parler with no ID. One of them actually had a blue check mark, which meant that they had verified somehow. But Ron repeatedly stated, that is not me. I do not and will not ever have a Parler account. The only account I have besides on Twitter right now is Gab.
Yeah.
So we all knew where Ron was at. We knew that was not Ron on Parler. And then there were other people who were saying, wait a minute, this isn't me. Hold on. So my question becomes, where was Parler's security? Because they didn't remove those accounts. They didn't remove the fake Code Monkey accounts. They didn't remove the fake Pompeo accounts. They didn't remove any of those accounts. So you can't call yourself a secure social media platform unless you are, and request that people verify, actually kind of insist that people verify who they are, and then not follow up on the other side of things. Because obviously there were people who were not verifying. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I have a very, to me, I don't give a shit. I don't care. You have my ID. So what? Whoopie shit. Okay. If this goes down in a bad way, I am on the dissident list. I made that list a long time ago. So I don't
Yeah.
care.
Well, we did. Matter of fact, we talked about it in the previous episode. I woke up one day, we had a red dot on our curb.
Yeah.
You know, we made Obama's dissident list, and I'm sure we would have been on Biden's. So
Now, to be fair.
But here's the thing, though.
To be
What?
fair, one of us made that list. It wasn't this half, it was that half. And it was because somebody wrote a letter to the White House that probably should not have been written and didn't
Well,
read it a second time
was-
before he hit send. He just
the
hit
guy
send.
was destroying our constitutional rights. I mean, I saw the writing on the wall. We were researching the hell out of it. Yeah, I got pissed. So I got on the White House website, and I told Obama in no uncertain terms that just because I left government service doesn't mean that my oath to support and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I capped domestic,
I love this
didn't
man. I do
expire
love this
when I
man.
left government service.
Oh,
And so, yeah. Anyway,
I keep
long story
repeating that to
short,
myself as the red dot lights in the middle of my forehead. I love this man. I truly love this man. Oh, I'm surprised he didn't sign it with my name.
no. You kidding me? I won't even let you get in my line of work. But So anyway, all right. So going back to the Insurrection Act. Okay, so he needed it to trigger Insurrection Act. Why? Because there was clear and definitive evidence of foreign interference in the U.S. election.
Right.
Which there was an EO written in 2018 that dealt with exactly that.
Yes.
So they monitored the 2018 midterm elections. They figured out exactly what they were doing and how they were doing it. And then in the 2016 election, 2014 midterm. So what the hell am I saying? 2018. So 2020. Okay, so 2020 election. They were monitoring everything in real time.
Yes.
All right.
He was in the Eisenhower building.
Monitoring the whole thing.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Steve Pieczenik dropped a nice little nugget, said that the whole thing was a sting operation, that they had watermarked all of the legitimate ballots with quantum dots tied to the quantum financial system blockchain that is going to be rolled out. All right. So he said basically that they could tell which votes went where, or which ballots went where, which ones were destroyed, and which ones were thrown away, and where they're at. That is how accurate this QFS blockchain is.
Correct. It's a blockchain.
Which we will talk about this in another show, because that's another. Oh, that is another doozy altogether. But going back to the election fraud. So 2018. They had already written the EO when it came to this, and they needed the Insurrection Act in order to get the military, the jurisdiction to override the DOJ and the FBI, who were sweeping this shit under the carpet. Okay, the DOD now has jurisdiction over all these investigations. All right, what?
Can I add to your timeline?
What? Go.
Okay, so add to that timeline. Yes, they had to meet the certain criteria to invoke the Insurrection Act. Yes, it's been in place since 2016, not 2018. They knew by Hillary's lack of fight with her loss that they had rigged it in 2016 for her to win, and they just didn't rig it enough. That's how they clued into the software. That's how they figured out which voting machines to watch. Going into 2018, rather than interfere. I mean, 2018 was completely rigged too, but rather than interfere, they simply recorded the data. And that way, they would be able to set it up for complete capture in 2020. Now, move forward. You have to meet the criteria of the Insurrection Act, which was signed in 2018, or which was brought into an EO in 2018. in March of 2020, when we first went into COVID-19, you remember on March 13th, the president declared a state of emergency.
That's right.
And
And this is important, guys. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. This is important. Go
when
ahead.
the United
Drop
States
it on
was
them.
on, okay, would you like to say it?
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I gotta get my bag of chips here. This is like,
When the United States goes into a state of emergency, FEMA assumes power. If you guys remember, when the president did the press conference announcing the state of emergency, there was no presidential seal on the podium. That was very telling. It was because FEMA had actually assumed power in the background. In other words, all the monetary, all the decisions in that matter actually go to FEMA. Now, FEMA went into a quiet mode, like literally, and anybody who's certified under FEMA will tell you, when there's a state of emergency, if you're FEMA certified, they begin issuing different directives to you. And it's all in part and parcel to what you signed up for when you got FEMA certified. They didn't do that. And this was supposed to be a pandemic. And yet FEMA was not issuing any directions to their certified people. And it's funny because a lot of people who are FEMA certified were like, what the hell is going on? We're not getting anything. Now I got to refer back to the Q drops again. Q has always told us that silence does not mean nothing is happening. Never take silence for an action. And I have to think, everybody would assume that meant Trump, or that meant one of the Trump party or the Trump team, but I'm thinking he was talking about FEMA. Because in this whole mess of the election, and you got to remember, again, a little bit of how things work here. DHS is in charge of what?
election security.
Okay, so this past week, with everything that happened, the head of DHS stepped down. And guess who stepped up into his position? The head of FEMA. So now we have the head of FEMA in charge of DHS, and FEMA is in control, believe it or not. In fact, I was kind of laughing because I said to Raphael, I don't even know if it's going to be the president. I don't know if it's the president that's actually directing all of these Nat Guard. I think it is, but it could actually be FEMA because they have that power.
Yep.
So
It sure as hell do.
people just, if you do not understand the way government works, you're not seeing the chess moves. Those of us who do know how government works are seeing the moves in a huge way. Then tonight, Governor DeSantis of the state of Florida called up our National Guard in case of civil unrest. Florida is a Republican state. There's not going to be civil unrest on the side of Trumpers. That I can tell you. If that was going to happen, it would have already happened. They're looking at civil unrest from the other side.
Antifa.
Yeah, especially when he's talking about calling them in to back up law enforcement.
Yep.
Conservatives do not go after the blue line because most of conservatives are blue line.
Yep. We're going to be drowning in liberal tears here soon enough.
I think so. I got to take us out to break again, though. So, folks, hang in there.
Yeah,
we're going to go out to our halftime show. When we come back, we're going to continue with this. And again, not trying to teach you history. I'm just telling you the facts. These are facts. You can go look them up if you want, Q or no Q. There is a definite methodology that is occurring. There's a definite pattern forward that is occurring. We're definitely seeing moves that are leading into if you're an intelligent person, your intelligent guess is going to be, yep, Insurrection Act has been signed because everything's falling into place. Oh, God.
But yeah, the halftime break is 10 minutes.
That cat head next to mine every night, folks. Every
Go ahead and go
night.
hit the bathroom if you guys got to get a drink or whatever. 10 minutes. That's the halftime break.
Shut up and sit down.
Romantic, isn't it?
Shut up and sit down.
And welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. On behalf of the Odyssey Radio Network, I'd like to welcome you back to the show. I am your hostess, the Wiccan Vixen. With me, as always, I have my co-host, Mr. Rafael Martinez. And yeah, we're still hammering the same subject, folks. I can't. It's like I don't know what I'm gonna do when this is all over. I'm gonna be like, man, now I got to do I told you so videos. But I'm pretty good.
Camera, I'm doing them. I am going to do them for all you bastards out there that question everything. No, but hey, I'm just kidding. But maybe
No,
not.
he's not.
We'll
No,
see.
he's not.
No, maybe not.
I
All
know
right.
you guys do. He's not kidding.
Anyway, so people are going to ask, well, why? They're going to ask what's going on behind the scenes. Over the last 4 years, Trump has slowly and methodically been working to shut down the U.S. corporation and to set us up to default on the Federal Reserve, to get rid of it altogether. All right. So if you don't understand what I mean by that, in 1871, Congress passed a law that created the U.S. corporation. Any of you can look at it. Look it up. The Act of 1871 creates the U.S. corporation, and it was reportedly used to it was supposed to administer the District of Columbia and the U.S. territories.
Correct.
But in reality, was they needed it to circumvent the Constitution. All right, because Article 10, Section 1 of the Constitution, and I don't mean the Bill of Rights, I'm talking about the actual Constitution, says that nothing but gold and silver shall be money. It's the reason why the Rothschilds in Britain worked so hard to get us under thumb, because if we there was an article I read, it was a a scanned old article from colonial times, from a British newspaper. And basically the article, it was an opinion piece basically saying that if we were allowed to continue, we would become unstoppable. We'd be the richest nation on earth, because we were the new world with unlimited resources, dealing strictly in gold and silver.
Yep.
All right. So it was in their interest, even after we gained our independence, to take us down, which is why we had the Act of 1870, or the War of 1812, which is why they helped foment the Civil War. They were trying to bankrupt us, and they did it. They did exactly that. But the Act of 1871 creates a corporate fiction. It'd be like, okay, let's say you want to sell your labor. I don't know how to make a proper analogy, but basically, instead of doing business under your name, you're doing it under the corporation that you set up. All right. So that's what happened. Rather than running government under the constitutional republic as a common law constitutional republic, the federal government's only job was only to maintain the common defense, and that was pretty much it. It was a federated government so that the states would control their own states. They were their own nation states.
Correct.
But the Act of 1871 created the corporate fiction, and that's how they started operating. They started operating under this corporate fiction, which is why they're able to get past the constitutional restrictions that they've been bound by. They've been able to pass regulations and just all kinds of unconstitutional shit.
But if you try to call them out on it, they'll never admit it, because if they are indeed run as a corporation, that would mean that we're all shareholders and they're simply a board of directors, and we can vote them out as shareholders do.
It's not. No, we're not the shareholders. We don't own the corporation.
See?
We don't own the corporation. We are the collateral.
But then that's what I'm saying. This would all have to come into admission.
Oh, absolutely.
You would have to, absolutely. And again, they're never, even when this is all said and done, I can't see them ever coming clean with that. Because
that's what the full disclosure is going to be about. I think they're going to have to, because the secret is out. You know, the thing about the COVID lockdowns is that it gave people time and gave them incentive to look, because nothing made sense. The narratives never made sense. So they sat at home and they dug and they dug and they dug, and people started waking up by the millions, which is why Trump won in a landslide victory. Yeah. The actual voting, he won in a landslide victory. The thing about it, though,
if the deep state had an ounce of common sense, it should have terrified them. Because just seeing the sheer numbers, it should have they should have been pissing. I don't know what made them think they could pull this off. I don't understand it. It goes against all logic. I mean, it's like, I know everybody says they're desperate. I don't see this as desperation. Well, now it's desperation. But
you remember what happened. I mean, the thing is, though, during when Hillary lost, it was because they didn't manipulate it enough to anticipate Trump's support, and to call him out on it, or to contest the election, would have opened them up to expose the voter fraud. Okay, now come back to this election, and not only, you had the deep state and all the people that were being blackmailed panicking, because if Trump got another 4-year election, they're all done. They were all done. There's no way they could keep going, running down the clock the way they have been. So, so what they do, the CIA servers in Germany were routing all the Dominion manipulation. There was the CIA anon had said that they had it in the bag, but then they said I'm not going to say the word, the N-words messed it up, because then they got into on it, and they started padding the votes physically and getting caught on tape, and so the whole manipulation got blown out. It was just wide open, not even including the electric part.
That wasn't okay. Their first mistake was when they stopped counting, because that's unheard of. Have you ever heard of a vote them stopping counting? No,
not on a presidential.
Only in the states that had issues, they stopped the count, and that just doesn't happen. I mean, literally, anybody who's got half a brain, and if this had been a Democrat that came out, if it was a stop count, all of a sudden Trump is 500,000 up, damn well it would never have flown. But because it was the Democrats who were up, it's suddenly, oh, well, Joe Biden he's more popular than Obama.
Yeah.
Right. Even, let me tell you, even the liberals don't believe that, because
Yeah.
even the liberals who troll our chat rooms, even those liberals don't deny that there was voter fraud. They simply say you can't prove it, but they don't deny it. They'll be the first ones to tell you that, yeah, Joe Biden's nowhere close to more popular than Obama was. They'll be the first ones telling you that. You know, so, and even Raphael worked a security detail during the election, and he actually sent me pictures because he was kind of horrified at what he was seeing. It was basically a dump box in Hillsborough County, Florida, which is a blue district, for mail-in votes. Just a box. Just dump your mail-in votes right here. That's super secure, let me tell you.
Yeah.
No issues with fraud involved in that system.
Like they were going to roll that thing in and replace the votes right on the spot.
Oh my God. You sent me that picture. I literally sat there going,
yeah.
okay,
Just drop it off here. We promise we'll put it in correctly.
How
honor you, dog.
I mean, it literally said, it had like a handwritten thing on it, mail-in votes. I was like,
yeah,
this can't be real.
Yeah.
But I mean,
well, and then you remember my mother just passed this year in 2020 in October. But in going through her personal effects, one of the things I also found was I was shocked at the amount of mail that she got for ballot harvesting.
Yep. In
that
Illinois.
Was in her personal effects.
Let's make sure we specify the state. It was Illinois,
yeah.
not Florida.
It was Illinois, and it just surprised me and just confirmed everything that we feared. But let me get back to the 1871 part, because it's important. Okay, so the U.S. government, the republic, cannot take on a fiat currency system, because the Constitution literally says gold and silver shall be money. That's it. So they create the corporate fiction, and then had it take out the loans from the Federal Reserve. They established the Federal Reserve. There was actually a first and second national banks where they started printing credit. Okay, Andrew Jackson killed the second one and actually had that put on his tombstone. I killed the banks. Yeah, it was on a deathbed. It was a deathbed statement. I make sure I tell them I killed the banks, because if they realized it gave them undue power and influence in the country, so they let their charters expire. So the Act of 1871, they passed that, and then a few years, or what was it, 1870 or 1871 and 1913. Okay, fast forward to 1913, they passed the third central bank, and they called it the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve is no more federal than the Federal Express. It actually has stockholder like the U.S. corporation.
It's private.
All right, it's private. So the Act 1913, they passed the Federal Reserve Act, which started loaning out money. Basically they usurped the Treasury's responsibility to create money for the country, which is supposed to be coined gold and silver. From there they were able to manipulate the currency and create booms and busts to keep the country in debt. Okay, under the Federal Reserve Act, and you'll find this on the Federal Reserve website, for every dollar they create for the U.S. government, they get a 6% bump on that money. So we pay it back plus 6%. So it guarantees that over time we will become so indebted that we would have to declare bankruptcy, which is exactly what they're trying to do right now. This is why they had to rush the timeline. So they had to print. The 08 crisis forced them to hockey stick print money. And we're not seeing the full extent of the inflation because a lot of it's getting shipped overseas, but the bill will come due.
Well, we were starting to see capital controls come into play before COVID-19 hit. But it's interesting because the timing of COVID-19 gave a perfect cover to capital controls. You know, that's why they know you couldn't use coins, you couldn't use this, you couldn't use that. Again, that's a form of capital control. And now,
Well, even
I'm
during
hearing,
the Obama administration, Citibank was restricting transfers in and
correct.
out of the country of 50,000, and there's a few other capital controls being instituted in place. And then it got tighter and tighter to get cash out of your own account, your own cash out. You go to the bank and tell them I want $10,000, they will laugh
Yeah.
at you.
Yep.
You can't do it. They want you in this digital grid, because as long if they can get rid of cash, and this is what the plan was, if they can get rid of cash, they can keep the Ponzi scheme going forever, because the fractional reserve banking it depends on how much money you deposit. So let's say you deposit $10, or say a dollar. Let's say $1. For every dollar that you deposit, they can create 10 bank credits, which are effectively dollars. This
Correct.
is why there's so much money in the system. This is why there's so much inflation, and people don't understand it. But going back to the Federal Reserve, the thing about the Federal Reserve is that the income tax portion is unconstitutional and was implemented to pay the interest. All right. And we know this because of the Grayson Commission report under the Reagan administration.
Yep.
Look at the Grayson Commission report. So basically, Ronald Reagan wanted to understand how the personal income tax was used. And so Grayson went out, came back 2 weeks later with an 8-page report and said not one nickel of the personal income tax goes to government services. It's the entirety of it goes to service the compounding interest on all the loans that we have taken out from the Federal Reserve. So going back to the last 100 years, whatever we borrowed plus whatever interest we owe, that's all it goes to. And then I've also found a Supreme Court case that said that wages do not meet the definition of income.
Correct.
Why? Because that would basically mean that the government has taken possession of your productive output, the sweat of your brow. That's slavery. They said that the definition of income would be, let's say Apple, taking natural resources, they refine it and they build it into a phone. They sell that phone for a profit. That profit is what income is. Income is not wages. But the IRS disregarded it. They don't follow the Supreme Court's own ruling, and they call it a frivolous claim.
Yep.
But there's no such thing. Even when you file an income tax return, they're trying to force you to violate your own Fifth Amendment right.
Yep. Well, and on top of that, you have even, I made mention of this earlier, and by the way, shout out to the Parlor Hub chat on Telegram. Great bunch of people.
Yep.
Getting larger and larger every day. But I had made reference in there to, basic things that we've seen that were violations, just absolute violations. And one of those things was marriage licensing. And
Yep.
I'm like, I had made the comment because I was like, I don't care if you want to get married. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you want to marry a bug. I don't care. SCOTUS had no place ruling on marriage. Why? Because marriage is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution of the United States of America. It's
Yep.
not addressed at all. So SCOTUS
It's not within government's power.
Yeah, it was out of line. It was not within their power. So I said, and in the same respect, it's licensing marriage is really not within the government's power either. Marriage is a religious ceremony. You want to make it a government ceremony, that's fine, but you still shouldn't have to pay for the ability to bind yourself to somebody else. That's all lawyers. That's one of the reasons I can't stand lawyers.
And it's all about the income tax and about taxation.
Correct.
That's what it's about. But let me finish up, because the thing is that we're running out of time. The thing about the Act of 1871. So under the income tax, so basically when you're born, your parents sign your birth certificate, and what they're unwittingly doing is that they are signing you into the system as collateral to future loans taken out by the government from the Federal Reserve. You are the collateral that backs the treasury bonds. And you don't know it, but under the Act of 1871, all of us are not persons. We're not sovereign individuals. We operate as a business, which is why there's so many laws that don't make sense, because they don't have the constitutional authority to do half the stuff they do under a constitutional republic. They only have the ability to do it if we're operating as businesses. We're regulated as businesses. Yeah, so I mean, it goes, it's so
Well,
deep, and I
here's
can't wait till this is all over.
Well, and here's kind of a way to pop it to you guys and to show you again the strength of the influence of the Chinese throughout this whole mess. You know, people, and I said it the other day, and it was so funny because they were like, really? The stimulus? I mean, because when I mentioned the stimulus, and I even said in my statement of 2008, and for some reason, Americans are so short-sighted and short memory. They assumed I meant the recent stimulus. I'm like, no, I wrote 2008. It's 2008. People forget China backed a huge chunk of that money. They don't think about it. It's like, no, you don't remember remember George W. was coming out of office. Obama negotiated the stimulus. He was the king. He was the savior. China backed a lot of that. And in exchange for that, people don't understand. China does nothing without collateral. Nothing. They are known for it. And you know what? Their number one, you want to know what their number one source of collateral is? Property. Property, which means, and from what I have researched and from what I've heard, the banknotes, your mortgages, all those loans were put in as collateral. So if you default, that property was given to the Chinese pretty much for pennies on the dollar.
Well, that's the way all.
Look at what we're seeing with the big city, the absolute jump. I mean, people are diving out of huge real estate areas, New York City,
sovereign
LA,
loans.
Very expensive real estate. Who do you think's going to end up with that real estate? Who do you think's out in the Midwest right now trying to buy up all of our farmland besides Bill Gates?
Yep.
Because Bill Gates has bought a huge chunk of it at dirt cheap.
Walmart and Target as well, and the Chinese.
Yep. So again, folks, you know, you have to pay attention. You can't, we cannot afford to live the life that we've been living, where we just went to work, loved our families. You have got to pay attention. I mean, we have let the shit show take control of all of our lives. And you know, we're not going to have a life to leave for our grandchildren, our children.
Yeah.
They're not going to have a semblance of what we had because we didn't pay attention. We still
we have a short attention span. We're so busy looking at 15-second TikTok videos that we don't think what happened a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. You know, we have ADD, and you know, between that and trying to stay afloat because they keep inflating the money and it loses its purchasing power. It doesn't mean your house is going up in value. It means your dollar is losing value.
correct.
All right. That's what people don't understand. You got to understand how money works. This is the great con. And the World Economic Forum website tells you straight out that in the future, they don't want you having money. They don't want you owning any property. You're going to be entirely dependent on their system, their
Stack
what do
and
they call
pack,
it?
baby.
Stack and packs buildings where you don't even have your own apartment. Matter of fact, look up there's an essay on the World Economic website. It's 2030, I own nothing, I have no privacy, and I have never been happier. They're trying to sell you on this idea, and it's
here's the
bullshit.
thing. If you think that's utopic, go look up the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. Go look up how the Soviet people lived in the cities, because that's exactly how they lived. They were in stack and packs. They had mixed families in one apartment. I mean, I remember when they first collapsed, I had neighbors who were Soviet. They were working on their green card and they moved here. And literally, they got an apartment. And the wife was so funny because that's all she kept saying is, there's so much room. It was like a 1-bedroom. And that's all she was saying, there's so much room. There's so much room. It's so quiet, because they were living in a sack and pack.
Yeah.
If you think that's the way we want to live, given the size of this population, and the way the generations younger than us have been raised, oh my God, there'd be a murder every.
Let's come back to that. Let's go back to that. We're going to break.
I got to take us out to our last break. Guys, when we return, we're going to finish up that thought process and then try to wrap this show up because, again, I don't even think we've hit a quarter of the points that we wanted to. There's just so much coming down the pipe right now. In fact, I was laughing because I'm getting alerts every 3 seconds on my phone of new information coming in on the pipe. So it's just, it's a great time to be alive, but it's a crazy time to be alive. Hang in there, guys. We will be right back. Okay.
Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
And welcome back, folks, to the last segment of Down the Rabbit Hole. Today's date, well, we're at January 16th, 2021. It is 12:55 a.m. I can't believe I'm still awake. I am your hostess, the Wiccan Vixen. With me, as always, I have my co-host, Mr. Rafael Martinez, my other half, my glorified warrior. Yeah, I'm feeling super enthused. I really want to go crawl into my bed, but this is important information. And we need to get it out.
We're on time crunch here. So, anyway, let me continue on. Yeah, I'm tired too, but I got to work tonight. So anyway, all right. So what's happening? Well, we know that the Biden, Pelosi, Harris, they're all compromised. They're all under foreign influence. So we've triggered all these powers, the emergency powers. So now we have the military has been deploying everywhere. The next thing you're going to see is 10th Mountain and the Marines probably deployed to D.C. to what? I think clean house, drain the swamp.
Well, they're going to deploy. I don't know if they said D.C. specifically. I don't know. You just said they were deployed.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. The bottom line is that we've been through the Q drops. We've been expecting mass declassification of all this information that Trump has been sitting on. Okay, including the 300,000, over 300,000 sealed indictments. All right, they've been sitting on over 300,000 sealed indictments for the last 4 years. It's been growing and growing and growing. We're up to 300,000. They've expanded Gitmo, they've renovated it, and now they have it staffed with, supplemented with National Guardsmen down in Guantanamo Bay. All right? There's a reason why they didn't shut it down. But under the Insurrection Act, now that the military's in play, they don't have to go through the civilian court. All right. So what did they do? Treason cases. All right. During the Kavanaugh hearing, I think Lindsey Graham did a 20-minute question or maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes max Q&A with Kavanaugh, asking about the historical precedents of using military tribunals to try treason cases.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly where it's going, guys. So we expected the dumps to start Monday. We figured about Monday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. But just today, I got a call from a friend of mine he's been around the block, ODA, CIA, did WIPS contracting overseas. He's been around the block, but he called me up and said he got calls directly from his guys inside. One's a CIA case officer, field agent, and the other one is a colonel. They both corroborated each other. There were two independent calls that said Sunday, it's on. They're declaring martial law on Sunday. Okay. Now, the colonel, somehow, for whatever reason, he was stunned because he got relieved of command. So they're consolidating. They must be consolidating forces. But whatever happened, he was told that Sunday. The CIA officer also same thing, said Sunday. So everything is lining up for Sunday. And then after that, it seems like the word has been getting out because, I mean, even the store shelves are starting to get cleaned out. If you guys aren't ready for long shelter in place, you're not ready. Get out there tomorrow. So, he
Don't have ammo,
corroborated.
you're out of luck.
Yeah. You gotta be prepared for all contingencies. So, long story short is martial law Sunday. Everything's gonna go into play, and they're gonna take down Biden. Now, the bigger picture, it's not just going to be the United States that's going into martial law.
Right.
You got Canada that's already under martial law. There's a few other countries already under martial law, but there should be a lot more going under martial law starting Sunday. It's going to be a sweep.
I just wanted to interrupt too to let you know. I mean, again, in the last couple of days, there's been multiple governments with mass resignations, like their entire government's resigning.
Yeah.
The Dutch government has resigned. Italy, big problem. And then today, Kuwait's government just resigned. So that just happened within the last hour.
Yeah.
Their whole parliament gone. They all resigned.
Things like that are not coincidences, guys. They're not coincidences. It's all happening at the same time so they can clean house globally. Because the problem is, if you leave the cancer anywhere around the world, I mean, they've been the counter coup, the White House, the counter coup has been underway for at least 30 years. I think, as I heard, as far back as the Kennedy assassination. All right, they've been documenting everything, every financial transaction where Wall Street cleaned out Main Street to the tune of $100 trillion, and they've laundered over $100 trillion in the drug trafficking and human trafficking alone. There's $21 trillion missing from the DoD, according to Catherine Austin Fitts, former HUD secretary. The criminality. The sheer scope of the criminality is so massive that most of you, your minds will be blown when it comes out.
Yeah.
All right. So what's going to happen Sunday is, and the reason why they're going to do it Sunday is because they don't want you going. They don't want you going out. They don't want you going to work. They want to get you in place while you're at home on a lazy Sunday. They were probably going to shut down the cell networks. They're probably going to pull the FCC licenses for the mainstream media outlets because they're all freaking disinfo agencies anyway. They're gonna and what end up happening is they probably shut down the cell towers, and you'll have to do your data over Wi-Fi. So what you should be doing is downloading Signal to encrypt your text and to be able to send your text between you and your family. Everybody has to download it. So your text will be sent over digital, which can go over Wi-Fi, and download Telegram because Signal is not scaled for that many people. And it's not good with groups. It's horrible with groups. That's why you want Telegram. If you can get everybody on Telegram, you'll be in good shape because it's not based in the United States. It's completely funded by the Duroff brothers. Telegram was created in response to the Snowden dump, and the Duroffs just put out a statement saying that they've been getting pressure from Apple and Google
To deplatform
to basically suppress speech on Telegram. And the Duroff brothers are billionaires. They got so much fuck you money. Damn it, there I go again. They got so much FU money that they said pound sand. So what are your options? What the good part about Telegram is that they also have the APK, the actual program app, installation app, available on F-Droid for Android and on GitHub. So you have options on Android. Apple is a closed proprietary system. So if they choose, turn off, whether you're on Apple or Android, turn off your auto updates, because they can easily go into your system and remove those apps completely. Okay,
Right.
especially for Apple guys, you Apple people, they can easily get in there and they can just turn it off. The good thing about Android is that you can install programs outside of the App Store,
Correct.
because all of Google's software is developed open source. Then they add their own proprietary stuff to get control and spy on everything you do and all that stuff. But it ultimately is open source, and which includes Android, the operating system.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefits to it. But download Signal and Telegram, because if this thing does go down on Sunday, you should be getting the emergency broadcast alerts. Supposedly, there's supposed to be 7 messages sent from Air Force One, and they'll link you to 3-hour videos of confessions. And I'm thinking it's going to come from Epstein, Maxwell, and whoever else they've had under indictment that they have in custody. And it's going to blow your mind, guys. It's going to be, but if you haven't been digging into this stuff, it's going to, yeah.
Well, it's look at you. Oh boy.
I can't wait.
That's because you truly questioned as to anything I can't tell you how many times I've had to calm this man down over the last several years.
Amen.
Because
you got to be straight.
like, dude, it has to happen the way it's playing out. You don't understand.
This has been the longest, most boring porn video ever. All foreplay and no, you know what?
You've only been involved in this video for what, since 2012? I've been watching the video for like 20 years. Think how
whatever.
Sheesh.
But when I got on it, I got in depth. I tore it up. You know it.
Uh-huh.
I'm impetuous for this entire show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm right.
Well, we could always go back just a few shows where you were still on the fence about QAnon. So and I kept trying to tell you,
but here's the thing.
It's military intelligence. It's military intelligence.
And here's the thing, though. It was a great story, and it seemed to line up that way. But it's one of those things where you got to fall back on the training. You can hope for the best, plan for the worst, and have backup plans for your backup plan. If Biden would have gotten in office, everything that Trump had done would have been wiped out.
I know that. And here's the thing:
and they would have all escaped justice. They would have all escaped justice.
It's so funny because people are, and there's always intelligent thinking tells you there's always that. You always have to have a backup plan. So in other words, if this fails, you have to have a backup plan. But I don't, honestly, because Q has not been off on anything. There's not been one wrong drop. It has played out exactly the way we were told it would play out. I mean, it's been such.
There was some disinformation.
But yes, we do. We've got the Twitter deletion. We've got the moves around. We've got the regiment.
No.
I mean,
I understand that. I agree.
You can't.
What I'm saying is that there were some parts of even the Q drops is we have to throw out some disinformation, because even the bad guys, the deep state, are watching our comms.
Yes.
We can't give up our entire game plan, but we can lay this stuff out so that as it rolls out, basically you'll see how it's rolling out. Yep. You'll refer back to the Q drops. It's kind of like the Bible prophecy. I mean, I'm looking at everything.
Yep.
And I wasn't before I started digging into this stuff. My relationship with God was, I didn't know. I don't know, but let me tell you something. We are at war. We are at the end times. That doesn't mean the end of the world. It just means that we're going to transition to the age of Aquarius. But there, being at war, there are no atheists in foxholes. If
Right.
you look at when I was during the Obama administration, I was watching everything. I swear to God, I found religion. I just started seeing all the stuff that we blew off on the Bible because we hadn't seen it yet. I was starting to see. All right, so there's some mysterious forces at play, however you want to say it. But I am a believer. I just hope it goes exactly as planned. Because the problem is, if it doesn't, if this goes beyond 11 days, it's going to be bad. It's going to be real bad. Not only that, but if you put the country under martial law, that means supply lines stop. That's why
Well,
I'm telling you guys, go
yeah.
shopping.
Get yourself stocked up. But it's very interesting because I had thought about this too. They keep saying the inauguration. And I'm like, yeah, Biden inauguration. Woohoo. It's not like he's really president. But, people don't understand. Again, you have to know your history. In recent history, they moved the inauguration to January. Before that, the inauguration was always held in March. And I thought about that because I thought, yeah, wait a minute, let's go back presidential terms. Inaugurations were always held in March, around between March 4th and March 10th, depending. And I had seen a little snippet somewhere saying that Trump was going to be inaugurated on March 4th. And I thought, holy shit, that makes sense. Because again, that sets us back to the times of the Republic. Because the date changed when we moved into the FDIC system, into the Fed, basically. That's when the date of inauguration changed. And I'm like, yeah, it actually makes sense that it would be moved back to March. That makes sense because that's how it was set up through the Republic. So, very interesting. And yeah, but that could, again, we don't know exactly what forces are at work. We do know that there are forces still within the military that are not in a good place. We just saw a slew of resignations this week from the military, a slew of them, which tells me that the people who were not on board with the Trump move left rather than have to make the choice between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And I know people will say that's dishonorable to do that, but I kind of get the position they're in. But again, folks, you have to understand that it's kind of like, nobody ever understood why the Confederacy.
Time to pick a side.
What?
It's time to pick a side. There's no fifth sitting.
People never understood with the Civil War. Why did the Confederacy name themselves the Confederacy? Because the Confederacy were actually the states that adhered to the Constitution. And I hate saying that because, yeah, they were in the wrong, but they were the ones that actually adhered to the Constitution. The Union did not. When our country was created, we were known as the Confederate States. That was the name of the country before we became the United States of America. The Articles of Confederation. Blah, 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 blah. I can't even talk anymore. You have to go back in our history. That is why the Confederacy called themselves that. Because again, they were going back and adhering to the original Constitution, which, as horrible as it was, defined slavery. And in order to get slavery out of the Constitution, they would have needed to have amended it with enough portion of the country to get it amended. And they didn't have that.
But it's not like the northern states were, it wasn't like the northern states were being idealistic about it. It was about taxation.
It was about money. They told the Confederates they could have they told the South, you can have your slaves, but we want 40%. It was about money. I mean, and I know I hate, people get upset when I say that, but I'm like, read the history. Go back and read the Corwin Amendment. That's what it was. They wanted money in exchange for allowing the South to keep their slaves.
And the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to the South.
It only applied to the South. The North kept their slaves until after the Civil War. Correct.
Yep.
It's true. It's a true story. It's sad, but it's true. In fact, General Lee released his slaves at the very beginning of the Civil War, whereas General Grant still had a slave at the end. So, again, you got to know your history, guys. And it doesn't mean I think the Union was wrong. I don't believe in slavery, never believed in slavery, but it wasn't
No,
about slavery. It was about the
no,
money.
no.
You
Well,
can
the
be
thing is,
idealistic if you want,
you
but
got one set of humanity released from slavery, and everybody then got sold into
got
slavery.
sold back into it. Literally.
Because it's
Literally.
the thing is, if you really think about it, you're not giving a cut of your money to the government, even for government services. That's interest. They own your productive output. That's what they've basically done. And the reason why I say that is because they decide how much you get to keep. They're not deciding how much you pay. They decide how much you get to keep.
Yeah.
And you need to look no further than the World War II era, where the top end of the income tax was in the 90 percentile, somewhere in the 90s. And so they own you. They own your productive output. George Carlin was right. It's a big club and you ain't in it. So it's just there's so many layers upon layers of lies and secrecy. Even the history that you told is watered down and inaccurate at best. The reason why they've been going after the statues and trying to tear down any signs of history is so that they can rewrite it.
Yep.
You know, it's 1984, A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and Fahrenheit 451, all mixed into one.
Yep.
You are here in the center. All these dystopic novels, they took as playbooks. It's like they're memorandums of how to, what we're doing next. You take those. Matter of fact, that should be the mandatory reading. Those 3 books should be mandatory reading.
Well, it used to be mandatory reading when we were growing up. Okay,
Yep.
That's how I was. Here's the thing. I never understood how you never read Fahrenheit 451. The first time you became familiar with this when we watched it on HBO. And
Yep.
I was like, that was required reading for me. And I'm only a few years older than you. So I don't know how you never got, Catch 22, Catcher in the Rye, frickin' Grapes of Wrath,
Yep.
Fahrenheit 451, 1984. These were all required reading.
Yep.
Now it's forbidden reading. To Kill a Mockingbird is now banned from many schools. That's required reading for a reason. It's not to promote racism. It's so you don't repeat the mistakes or you don't make the mistakes. So
if they can change the amount you pay into the income tax system just by passing a bill, they own your productive output. They decide. Basically, you just went from a slavery system where they whipped you to get just enough work out of you to not get whipped, to a system where you fed yourself, you clothed yourself, you provided your own medical, and in exchange they gave you funny money they printed out of thin air, and you gave them the very best output, including your creativity and your intellectual property. You basically gave them the best of you.
Think about it this way.
They still got their pyramids. They didn't need to whip you. They still got their pyramids.
But think of it this way, folks. Most of you are our age. And we're between 40 and 60. I'll just ballpark it. But most of you are in our age group. We remember the Soviet Union. We remember, I remember doing drills, because I grew up in a state that's close to Cuba, and we were always under the nuclear attack drills. You had to know what to do for a tornado, and had to know what to do in case of a nuclear attack. So
get under your desk. Yeah.
Oh my! Get under your desk. Like that's gonna help a whole hell of a lot.
I know.
Oh gee, safety blanket.
It's the same shit they're pulling with this coronavirus and the masks.
I know.
And the social distancing.
I know.
You're being conditioned for slavery.
The mask will bring death faster. I'm just gonna put that out there. But
you're being slave trained.
The point I'm trying to get to is that we remember being shown the pictures of the Soviets and the bread lines. We remember being told how if they spoke out against their government, they were arrested, they were incarcerated, the KGB was up their ass. And this wasn't just propaganda. This was coming from people who defected from the Soviet Union. So we knew that this was how they were controlling. This is how it was going. I think it was Gorbachev who finally started moving more in the direction of not a democracy, but not a tyranny either. He was kind of moving
Yeah.
out of that communistic state. But we remember, and I got to tell you, folks, we passed that line where they stood about 15 years ago, because we have to watch everything we say. We have to say now they're talking about putting us all on dissident lists and put us all on, if we supported Trump, we are going on a terrorist list.
Yep.
So tell me how that is any different than Soviet Union.
Besides natural causes and disease, democide is the greatest killer of humanity.
Yeah.
Governments kill their own people, and that's the great fear. That is the great threat. That is the reason why we have the Second Amendment to back up all the other amendments.
Correct.
Which is why they shouldn't be infringing on it at all.
Yeah.
Now, my last thought is that, they're trying to, the deep state is trying to bankrupt us. Trump is trying to free us. That's what you need to know. That's the broad strokes, and that's what you got to get through to your friends and family. But ultimately, if we lose this, not only will they be killing off large portions of society, of humanity, they want to reduce our numbers to a manageable number, but the people that are left are going to be eating freaking weeds and bugs.
Yeah.
Because just go to the World Economic Forum website. You'll see it all there. It's artificial scarcity is exactly that, artificial.
Yep.
And they do it with everything from diamonds to food. Everything. Yep. It is all a strategy of tension. As Henry Kissinger said, control the energy and you control nations. You control the food and you control the people.
Yep.
And that's what you really need to know.
Yep. With that, guys, we are signing off for the evening. Have a great weekend. Be helpful. Be happy. Love your family. Hold the people you love close. Don't ever forget, that this country was bound together by family units. We destroyed ourselves by dismantling our family units.
Yep.
If you're at odds with your family, go back and try to mend the bridges. We have to start bringing ourselves back together again, not just as a country, but as families, as people. We have to learn to stop the pettiness, stop the BS, let things go, and learn to love each other again. Because trust me, after the fallout of this, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to need a lot of help. I can tell you that. And it's not going to be the people who already know what's coming. And even a lot of us haven't seen a lot of what's coming, but we know. We've been girded. We've been told, we've been warned to gird ourselves. And even then, we've been told that some of what's going to be revealed is enough to make long-term seasoned investigators want to commit suicide. So that's some heavy-duty stuff, folks. That's some heavy-duty stuff. So, like I said, get yourself in a good place. Make sure you have your backup supplies, have food, have water, dry goods, canned goods, water. Okay? And if you can, a backup source of power. Just make sure you have these things. Okay? And
before Sunday.
Yeah,
before
hopefully
Sunday.
It doesn't get to that point, but if it does, make sure, especially if you're in the big cities, folks. If you are in a big city and you have a way to get out now. And that's all we can say. Ralphie, anything besides gazing off into nowhere?
No, that's it. I mean, we're running out of time, but again, just if you want, our Down the Rabbit Hole Facebook page is still up and running, so you can go back and look at the old videos to get some context on all this stuff that we talked about, because we've been talking about this stuff for years. But it's finally coming to pass. So I wish everybody luck, and hopefully we'll see each other on the other side.
And if you guys are looking for a home because you got dumped off Parler, dumped off Facebook, and banned from Twitter, there's actually some great chat rooms that have been set up on Telegram. If you do not have the Telegram app, get it while you can. It is available on Google Play as well as the Apple platform right now. Download it. There's a great group in there right now called the Parler Hub. They basically are a group of lost people from Parler. And if you're afraid that you're going to look ridiculous because you don't know how to use Telegram, don't worry about it, because there's a lot of people in that chat who have no idea what they're doing on Telegram, and they're getting there. So we're all here
and also,
for each other.
and we also have a news channel. It's at Rabbit Hole Raiders on Telegram.
Yep.
And yeah, so the sooner you can get on that, the sooner you can get up to speed. We'll keep you up to speed on everything new that we get.
Yep, we do try to do that. You will find information comes down the pipe quickly. Don't get frustrated if you see repeated things, because again, things are coming down so quickly that people don't always realize that somebody posted it right above them. So
yeah,
don't
just
get
turn
frustrated.
off the notifications. Yeah, just turn off the notifications because they're going to come through 24 hours. And then just check it in the mornings and just, yeah.
See, mine's on vibrate, so Raphael thinks I'm just having fun half the night, but no, it's my phone. All right, guys, with that, we are out of here.
Is that why there's a light under the sheets?
He gets jealous, man. He gets jealous. He's just
Whatever,
like,
man.
what are you doing over there? Have a great evening, you guys. We're out of here. See y'all next week.
Shut up and sit down.